Do I start over?
Thanks, Jake. Get the middle mic.
Afternoon, thank you. I just wanted to bring the laptop RFP recommendation to the board SPIT committee today. And part of that is we go through a rigid process to determine which device we make the recommendation. We go out to bid. We also bring them in, we take them apart. We collect feedback on a scorecard, which is included in your packets. And that is how we determine which vendor would be the best use in our district for the next 5 years. We take in not only price, we take in the complete package. We take in all of the elements that go into the construction, the price, the financing. It's not just based on one element. It's based on what we determine would be the best use of a product in our district. And in front of you now is a recommendation letter. It's also a scorecard that gives you that information. The technical specs are on the second page of our selected vendors. We'll show you the minimum requirements of those that submitted bids. And the last page is the actual scorecard of how we justified our recommendation based on staff feedback. So I'm entertaining any questions you have on that.
Quick question, Jay. There just seemed to be, as a coach, I look at these numbers, and I mean, there was just like a total domination in scoring. How did that come about?
We had an open viewing of the products on July 12th. We invited everybody in the district to come give us a scorecard. We put the complete packages up on the screen so everybody could see what was involved with each vendor, and they would rate it based on touch and feel and speed, how it performs, and then they would give us this ranking that you see off that scorecard. And we would take that feedback collectively, total it all up, and then come up with a score from each area.
So that feedback is subjective?
It is.
So their grading of the product is subjective to each user?
To an extent, we provide the data that gives the background on each vendor. We also provide that information on the construction quality and warranty. So there's parts of it that is subjective, but there's others that are the data requirements that we need to perform in our district.
Do you have any concerns that any of these three options would not meet our needs?
Yes, sir. One of the options that's in the last column of your sheet does not provide any kind of construction durability that we could find that meets our minimum specs from our department. And also the processor, we use a 12th gen processor, which is a 12 core. And the first two in your columns, both of those entail the 12 core processor, either i5 or i7, but it has the 12 core. We use a 32 gig of memory in them, the 500 hard drive, just like anybody else in a 15.6 screen. The last vendor does not provide any kind of case for the product because it was not available at the time of their production.
And I noticed Dell is not on the list, and I know you and I have talked about it, but could you elaborate why Dell is, a major manufacturer like Dell is not in the running?
Yes, sir. They didn't meet our minimum specifications in the RFP. In there, we indicated we needed some HDMI display ports, which is basically the cord that goes from your display and your screen to the computer. In the past, we had dongles, which are adapters that go from that screen to your computer. So in the new RFP, we didn't want to deal with dongles. We asked specifically for an HDMI port to make it easier on our teachers when they have instruction, move class to class, to connect their devices. And Dell specifically said they did not provide an HDMI port at all. And they also did not provide any case for the product that in the bid that they gave us. There was no case with that either. So both of those didn't meet our minimum requirements.
Could you discuss the warranty differences on the three options?
Sure. The first option, the first column, has repairs that are 12 repairs per year per serial number. And that is on accidental damage protection. So if something is spilled into it or dropped, or the unit just gets hit by a power surge, it's covered. And we can file that same serial number 12 times a year and get fully reimbursed. We also call it a self-maintainer program, which gives us a reimbursement for repairs, warranty repairs that we perform within Union County Public Schools. And they also give us the Land School device, which is $350,000 as a product, which just basically does Chromebook monitoring. The second column that you have in front of you allows only one repair per serial number per year, and there is no self-maintainer program involved with it, and does not provide any other Chromebook monitoring software. The third does give you a self-maintainer program, but there's a cost involved to it for the district to enroll and stay enrolled in that product.
Can you acquire that software for option, the HP option?
No, sir, they did not give us a self-maintainer option. We must contact the column, your second column in. We must contact them and let them know that there is a repair that's needed. And then they perform that from their facility and their team.
As far as, and I know this is not your territory, the lease financing, is that handled by a third party for all these different options?
Yeah, Sean is indicating yes. I know vendors offer those options along with any of the financial institutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so once we have approval from the board and know exactly what the approved purchase is, we will start negotiating financing with several of the financial institutions locally and others that we've done business with in the past. Right now, we are seeing an increase in rates, so the sooner we get through the process, but we have seen an uptick in the recent weeks of what interest rates we will most likely be negotiating.
Will any of these three options financed at current rates still meet within the budget?
None of the options we have due to the increased costs, I would say through supply chain and other experiences that we've seen with technology, all of these options will be greater than the budget that we have currently in our capital outlay. This year, we will only have 3 payments to make on this lease this year, because once we execute on the purchase order and the contract, we won't have the goods received to make payment. So we'll be about $90,000 short on our current budget, which is $730,000. That's my estimate, is we'll be about 90,000 short, and we'll look at some of the prior year capital budgets and any savings in those budgets to make that difference up. Next year, we'll include that increase, which is a little over $350,000 that we'll have to include in that lease payment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So question with this, with Lenovo, are we leasing directly from Lenovo or leasing directly from, can you explain how that works a little bit more?
Okay, so depending on where we get the best financing, we will make the purchase from whoever you award the bid to, and then the financing, we will receive those funds to pay in full the purchase. So whatever financial institution we choose to use, that's who we will make those payments to over the 59 months. So we are looking at right at 5 years. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mr. Parker, what's the timeline for implementation? Are these units readily available?
Yeah, there's a 6 to 8 week time lag between the time we order and delivery. Our expectation is to provide staff, which includes our central office staff and our teachers, with devices by Christmas. I mean, we have to cross all the schools. We image them now. We use Intune, which is a cloud product for imaging. So it should make it faster, and we will, as soon as they arrive, we're going to begin our duty of distributing these. The old devices will not be sold. They will be utilized with our student teachers, media center replacements. They're going to go back into other areas of the district.
And the vendor in column 1, they will actually provide the custom imaging for us?
Yes, they do. They will. The first 2 columns already have that in place. And the third column, there's a question mark there. It may be, but the first 2 definitely have it in place.
Okay, thank you.
I see the per unit cost on the HP option is less than the other 2 options. Can somebody do the math and over the total purchase, what the difference is in pricing?
Sure. Yes, we can.
And again, the recommendation is based on the full package, right? Not just the per unit cost?
It is, the per unit cost is just one factor in our estimation of giving the recommendation. We look at what the manufacturer has to offer, like I said, construction, quality, sustainability, our relationship with them, also, what are they offering with the package? Are you offering any other items that benefit our district?
So of the pricing that you've given us, the per unit cost, are there any other in the overall package cost that should be figured in? Or is it just a matter of multiplying the unit cost times how many we're buying?
It's the unit cost plus the tax and whatever the financing cost would be with the interest rates.
Well, that'll be equal across the board, basically. Whatever vendor turns out better as far as financing, that will be for any of the options. So that's really, as far as I'm concerned, a level field. In other words, if we don't go with option number one, we're not going to get a better financing deal. So that's really not part of the decision process as far as our options, right?
Yes, sir. The unit cost is one of the factors that they need to be competitive, but it's not the only cost. It's not our only factor in determining which vendor.
Okay. Lenovo, who are they owned by?
Chinese-based company.
Okay. And Hewlett Packard?
They're U.S. based.
And these units, the three options, where I know they have parts from all over the world, I'm sure. Are any of the options manufactured domestically or assembled domestically?
Yeah, HP has a domestic factory here, and they also have one in Texas, but it does assembly, and parts come from all over Asian countries. And just like any other computer manufacturer, it's going to be hard to find anyone that produces a product that's wholly owned and made here in the United States, because parts come from all over the world. We're a global economy, so you're going to collect items from everywhere to assemble your products. The first column also has a distribution facility in the United States, and also an assembly, which most of them do. They typically create these assemblies closer to the market, so there can be the nimble adjustments for model numbers or parts if needed, so they get it closer to where they're going to end up being used. So it benefits all manufacturers to have them close to their end users.
So we have one option that is a Chinese-owned company, Sharp, also foreign-owned. Are they Japanese, Sharp?
Yes, sir.
Or is it Korean? Okay, Japanese. And Hewlett Packard, an American company. It's basically, I'm talking, and I realize parts come from all over. That's a whole different issue. But I'm wondering where, on a purchase this size, my question is, where's the money going? And it's going to a Chinese company, it's going to a U.S. company, or a Japanese company through the vendors. Is that correct?
It would determine who was the recommended vendor.
Right.
It would go to that.
That's where it's going with those three options. Okay. Do we have a total of the overall package? All three? Okay, so basically from a financial standpoint, all we have to go on is the per unit cost?
Well, the per unit cost is really close, in value.
Right.
It does not include all the other intangible packages that are involved with each vendor.
How many are we purchasing?
A minimum of 3,200. My estimate's about 3,350, which should total us around 4.2 million, somewhere around that area over 5 years as a lease.
And how many of those will you hold in reserve for either temporary or permanent replacements?
All of them would end up in the hands of staff or instructional classroom.
Okay. So that's good to know. They're not going to be, there's not going to be 100 of them sitting in a locked up room somewhere just in case we need it for emergency.
No, sir. These are intended for our staff to use every day for their business, and we want to get them as quickly in their hands as possible. The old units would be the ones that we would bring in, refurbish, and then replace older media centers, give them to teacher assistants,
Right.
student teachers, things like that.
So if something happens to something and it, whatever needs to be repaired, we'll have, although not optimum brand new units for temporary use, we'll have something.
Yes, sir. 2017, we purchased 3,200 devices. They were roughly $800 at that time. The price has increased as noted on the sheet.
Yeah. How many, can you guesstimate, Jay, this might be a hard question to answer. If, let's say we have, I don't know what you said, 3,350 in the hands of staff. At any one time, going through the school year, how many of those, what are you looking at, maybe 5% or less that might be in need of repair? How much out of service are you encountering on these things?
I would have to research
that-
that before I give you an answer.
Yeah, that's probably
I
not too
don't
easy
know
to
that off the
figure
top of my
out.
head.
So, Mr. Parker, could you go back over the criteria that the committee?
Yes.
So first of all, like, who was the subcommittees that created the committee?
So we have a process of which you can see with the scorecard that we keep together. We invited everyone, I mean, all of cabinet, sent it to their staff. So we had some members of each of those departments listed that gave us feedback, plus our technical team, which showed up and looked at it. And we got feedback from individuals to complete the scorecard, but each one of them are based on price, the reliability, the vendor relationships. It's also the complete package. We're not only looking at, cost. It's a lot of intangibles that our district benefits from vendors. So those come into the decision too.
It looks like you definitely did your due diligence. You have multiple subcommittees, you have a weighting of the scorecard. Specifications being the number one weight, durability of the box, which is very important because these do fall on the ground, right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm, as Mr. Benson mentioned, like, the scoring is so lopsided towards the one vendor. It's quite amazing.
This time we asked for hard shell clay cases on the units. In the past, we have not had those, which you can, if you observe any device, there's not a clamshell type case on them. So this time we asked for those on it to give it a better protection and longer life.
And can you just talk briefly about the LAN school, what that is?
Yes, sir. That's a Chromebook monitoring device. We had it in 2017, 18, going into 19, and then our license expired. It runs $60,000 to $70,000 a year based on the number of Chromebooks we have. It gives the ability of the classroom teacher to look at all of the student Chromebooks at one time on a monitor. So that way, if a teacher has students go to Discovery Ed and starts researching information, they're able to glance at their screen and see that everybody's on task, everybody's made it to that page, and that that instruction's moving on and nobody needs assistance. So that piece gives you that monitoring tool to help a student. It also allows the student to go to another classroom and teachers can help them. They can chat over that Chromebook monitoring tool that we have out there. Only while they're in school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's when we have our.
So while they're on the network.
Yes,
right?
while they're on our network and in our school from 8 to 3.
And that's valued at $70,000 a year over the 5 years for a net of $350,000.
Yes, sir.
And none of the other vendors are providing that. Just
They have not offered that in
recommended?
any of the packages. No, sir.
Okay.
Here, Jay, two quick questions. And first being, did the team that were involved in the process, did that reach the principals level, assistant principals, anybody in the schools at all?
We did not have anyone from the school show up, but there was an invitation for that. And we had 2.5 hours where everybody could come by, view the product and give us their feedback.
Okay. And the second thing is, we've heard a lot today about U.S. company, foreign company. Is there any company that you know of in America that is American owned that goes from nuts to bolts with no distribution chain from any foreign entity as it relates to laptops, Chromebooks, all of that? Is there such a company that you know of that could have been part of this RFP?
No, sir. For laptops and desktops, they're globally made. They use parts from all over. Servers are a whole different animal and story that you talk about for assembly, but definitely for what you have as a proposal in front of you, it is an assembly of parts from all over the world.
So even if we chose a company in this business that was American, it may say American company, but just like the movie Armageddon, when he's banging the wrench on the machine, he says Russian parts, American parts, all made in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Is basically what you're saying.
Yes, sir. It takes a global economy to assemble these electronic devices, and they specialize in each country. They specialize in parts or have a more efficient process, but no, there's none that I know of or aware of that are all from nuts to bolts complete.
I just didn't want folks to think that there was such an
sir.
American company and we just didn't choose.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Parker, Lenovo is a publicly traded company though, right?
Yes,
Like
sir.
on a US stock exchange,
Yes, sir.
just like HP. So
Just like
really all American owned, right?
I'm not sure, sir.
I mean, as far as shareholders go.
Yes, it's whoever purchases the stock. Yes.
Okay. All right, so the panel did their due diligence. You've come with a recommendation. You're recommending Lenovo they received the highest evaluation panel's cumulative score, and that is your recommendation, correct?
Yes, sir. That's our recommendation.
Could I ask a procedural question before we proceed?
Yes, sir.
In order to maintain this or put this on the consent agenda, does it require just a majority of the committee members or a unanimous decision of the committee?
There's no specific legal requirement for something, for a supermajority to put something on the consent agenda. So if the motion is to send something to the board on the consent agenda, then that can be the decision. And then any board member can always pull something off the consent agenda as well.
So thank you. Based on that.
And
it
I
looks
would
like-
ask that when you make the motion also, that it be contingent on legal review of the final contract.
I just wanted to make a statement that Lenovo that you mentioned, they have assemblies all, at several places in North Carolina, in Wisnet and Mooresville, that they assemble the product here in the United States.
Okay.
So American workers are putting this together.
Yes, sir. It's whoever they employ to assemble these devices, they're assembled here.
All right, so we have a recommendation from Mr. Parker. Do I have a motion from the board?
Shauna just wanted y'all also to know that it has to go to the BOCC. There's a whole process for leases at this level.
Yeah.
Does that need to be part of the motion?
No, we'll follow the process.
Okay.
I just wanted to be sure to be clear that it's got to be subject to legal review because we don't normally have this happen before a contract's reviewed.
Madam Attorney, are you saying it'll have to go to legal review before it even goes to the full board?
No,
Oh, okay. I just was making sure.
No.
No, I'm just making sure.
no, what I would request is the motion say that it's subject to legal review.
Okay. So I'll accept the motion.
Motion to recommend staff's recommendations to go with Lenovo to the full board pending legal review.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Passes 3-1.
Thank you. That was the only item on the agenda.
All right, and that'll be taken to full board and will appear on the consent agenda, correct? All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.